This brief presentation runs through 10 points to help you check that you're ready to submit your assignment. None of the points will be new, I'm sure, but we hope that by bringing together into this simple list that you'll just be able to have an easy way to check that you're ready to submit it. So the first point then is about answering the question and concerns checking that you've answered the particular question set in the assignment task. It can be sometimes quite easy to slightly drift off the point of the question and to find that without realising it, you've perhaps answered a slightly different question, and it's worth making sure that that doesn't happen. One tip that can help with that as you're working on your paper is to write the question at the top of the first page. Another tip is to check your conclusions and to ask, do they provide an answer to this particular question? Coming on to the second point, this is about the introduction to your paper, and is concerned with checking that you've provided a really nice, clear introduction to your paper, which will give your reader a sense of what you're going to be talking about. The introduction should typically be about 10% of the total length of the paper, and it should do three main jobs. First of all, it should explain as precisely as you can the purpose of this paper, including any particular focus that you're going to take. Secondly, it should explain how you're going to structure it, so what will the main sections be. And thirdly, it will briefly sum up your conclusions, and that's very important to give your reader an early clue about where you're heading here. And this leads us on to our third point, which is about the conclusions. This is about checking that you have got some nice, clear conclusions which wrap up your work and show your answer to this question. This section should again be about 10% of the total length of the paper, and it should sum up the key points that you've established. Very importantly, you need to make sure that you don't introduce any new material here. This isn't the place to be introducing new references, new points that you've just come up with. Everything that's in your conclusions should be things that you've already discussed in your main body of your paper, and here you are bringing them together. So nothing new, but it's a way to help you sum up and summarise the ground you've covered and come to a really clear finish point. Number 4 is about the structure of your paper and about ensuring that your paper is as clearly structured as it can be. And this point is very much about making sure that your reader can follow what you're writing as easily as possible. And in fact, a number of the points in the checklist are very much about that. One tip would be to think in terms of using subheadings and linking sentences to help guide your reader. Often the structure of what we write can be very clear in our minds, but it's perhaps not that clear on the page. And so by giving some very clear signals, we can really help the reader with this. It's important to aim for roughly 3 or 4 paragraphs per page. That's not a cast iron rule, but it gives you a kind of guide, a kind of rule of thumb of the sort of length of paragraph that it's good to aim for. And one tip here could be to ask yourself, do you think that a new reader could easily follow your line of thought? And the structure of your paper is designed to help the reader to do that. Number 5 in this list is about trying to ensure that you take a critical approach. So it's about reviewing whether you've shown that you can think critically about this topic by, for example, showing that you can discuss different viewpoints and perspectives, commenting on and discussing the material that you draw on rather than just describing it, and trying to develop a clear point of view about the assignment question. This is an area where people often feel that there's still more for them to do and perhaps not quite confident that they're yet taking a critical approach in the way that they want to. If that's the case, don't worry about it too much, because you'll certainly get help and guidance and feedback about that. And it's a skill that develops steadily over your studies. So do what you can and do your best, but don't be too concerned if you think there's still more that you can do for the future. Number 6 takes us on to a slightly more technical issue and is about citations. In other words, making sure that you've provided citations to show what sources you've drawn on, including, importantly, all the academic sources that you've used, so whether that's journal articles or chapters from books, from the core readings, additional readings, anything you've drawn on needs to be cited in the text, and that's by providing the author's name and the year. And you also need to cover any sources that you've drawn on, which may be other sources of information, perhaps where you've referred to an organisation or some information, some facts that you know about. In all these cases, you need to show where you got the information from. And this is important because you want to avoid the reader saying to themselves, how does he or she know that? You want to be very transparent about where you got your information and your viewpoints from. And this all comes together by providing a bibliography at the end of your paper that lists all of your sources alphabetically. Moving on to formatting, again a slightly technical point, but it's about making sure that you follow the required formatting rules. This may seem a slightly kind of picky point, but it's again about making sure you've got a kind of clear approach which the reader can follow easily. So we ask you to use Arial font size 12, to use 1.5 spacing, and to put an extra line in between paragraphs. And those simple rules will help to make sure that you've got a nice, clean, clear and professional approach to your work. Number 8 is about proofreading and comes obviously towards the end of the process, and is about making sure that you've checked for minor errors in spelling and in sentence construction and so on. Individual errors may seem quite small, but if they begin to accumulate, they can become quite distracting, and that's when it begins to affect the reader and how your sense is coming across to them. So it really is worth asking yourself, is the meaning of each sentence clear? And does it make sense when you read it aloud? And it's certainly worth trying to put aside your draft paper for a few days and then coming back to it so it's a bit fresher, so that you can see it with a fresh pair of eyes and pick up these issues more easily. So it's a really good idea, if you can, to build in some time for this step towards the end of the process. Point 9 is about the word limit. I know this will be very obvious, but it's definitely worth making sure that you kept within it, because words that are beyond the limit don't count, and therefore you don't want to be wasting energy and word length for no reason. So do make sure that you're sure what the word limit is and keep to it. And the 10th rule, very importantly, is to make sure equally that you're aware of the deadline and that you keep to that submission deadline and submit within it. The deadline is always at 16:30 UK time on the day of the deadline, and the aim should be to upload well in advance of that deadline to avoid any last minute problems of any kind. Very importantly, if you ever find you can't meet the deadline, it's really important to submit an extension request using what's called the exceptional circumstances procedures. The reason that's important is if you do miss a deadline without having first of all requested permission to do that, you will be liable to some fairly substantial penalties which can really affect the outcome of your work, and we very much want you to avoid that. If ever you need any help at all with, for example, putting in the request for an extension, or if you want to discuss whether to do that, then your supervisor is the person to ask about that. And the final important tip here is, if you have problems ever uploading your paper, then do get in touch by email, and the address that to write to is shown there, and it's important again to make that approach in advance of the deadline. So it's really important to know that you're well in time there, not least as well to take the pressure off you. So I hope these 10 points have been useful. There are some further resources which you can look at in terms of university links and guides, and they're listed below this video. So I hope this has been helpful for you, and above all, good luck with your assignment work.